Welcome back, everybody. We are about to start our fifth out of six panels today. And so, once again, I want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Ria Health, who is our co presenting sponsor. And our panel sponsor, Deer Haven Gardens Recovery. Thanks to our sponsors, we're able to bring you all of this content for absolutely no charge and get this out to as many people as we can. It will be available for playback for 14 days here on our Twitch channel, and we'll move it to YouTube afterwards so that you can all share it. I know last panel we were talking about things that you can do. Sharing information is a great way to start. So this panel is the courage to find a different way. I've got David Belenky and Seth Rosen, who are going to talk about their individual journeys from meeting rooms of AA to success on the Sinclair Method. And this is something that comes up a lot. Many people have these questions. Well, how do I move from AA and an abstinence only mindset that everyone's pushing me into, that I've tried that hasn't worked for me in the past, to something like the Sinclair Method that requires drinking in order for it to be successful? So I am largely just going to let these two gentlemen tell their stories and talk about their experiences, and I will monitor the chat room for any questions. And let's go ahead and start with Seth Rosen. Go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little background and tell us about your story.
Okay. Well, it's been a few years since I've been asked to speak on this topic, like in an AA group, so I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Seth. I'm not an alcoholic. And where do I want to start? I'll start with, I began going to AA in 2000, and I spent about 8 years sober, going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then through a couple life events, I found myself not believing the stuff that I was saying. So I quit for a number of years, started drinking again, and it became a problem. And I was looking for solutions, and somehow I found out about the Sinclair Method, and like, I guess a good skeptical person, I was like, that'll probably never work. And one day I just decided to ask my doctor to prescribe naltrexone to me, and he reluctantly did. He gave me all kinds of reasons why it wasn't going to work. And I started the Sinclair Method on January 13th, 2016. And I found myself extinct by July 2016. So it was about 6 months. And I've been involved with talking about the Sinclair Method online for that entire time. Is there anything else I should talk about?
I guess I'll jump in. It's great to be here. Jenny, thanks so much for asking me to speak. You're doing an awesome job. I know you're sort of navigating a lot of moving parts here. And I'm very impressed. I've been watching all day, and it's just a wealth of information. And I also want to thank Claudia Christian, who I owe my life to. You know, she put it out there first, as far as first the TED Talk, and then the One Little Pill, which I did not know existed until 2.5 years in my journey in recovery. I wish I had known about this method a long time before that, because I think I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and confusion, but I didn't. So I live in Los Angeles, and I've been on the Sinclair Method now for 2.5 years, and before that, prior to the Sinclair Method, I was in AA for 2.5 years, completely sober. I went to 5 meetings a week. I had a sponsor. I even had a sponsee. I did everything that was asked of me. And I went from being confused as to how I got there, but optimistic and hopeful that this would be the thing that worked for me, to slowly sliding into, for me, the sort of lowest point of my life. And it was probably 2.5 years in where this thing that was supposed to be working, this thing that was supposed to be helping me, was actually, for me, making me feel incredibly unsatisfied. And the only time in my life where I just did not want to be on this planet anymore. And prior to that, I never had those morose thoughts. I'm not a morose person by nature, but and I just want to say, I have plenty of friends who have been in AA for many years, like Seth had been. And one of my dearest friends, my former sponsor, is 25 years sober, and he loves it, and it's worked for him. And I know it's worked for a lot of people. I just know that it doesn't work for everybody. And I think you can talk about anything in AA except that. And that's, I think, one of the big problems, is that when you say this isn't working for me, and I honestly, for 2.5 years, gave it everything that I could, and I did everything that was asked of me. And when I said this isn't working for me, what do I do now? The answers that I was given were not satisfying. And I was really depressed and I was really confused, but I didn't know that there was another way. So I just thought, all right, I'm just going to be miserable in sobriety one day at a time for the rest of my life, and that's just how it's going to be. And then I saw One Little Pill, and then I'm sorry, I saw that Claudia's TED Talk, and my first reaction was like, oh my God, what is this? This is crazy. I've never heard of this concept of actually engaging in the very behavior that it got me here in the first place in order to cure myself. I mean, that just absolutely went against everything that I had learned in program. Mm-hmm. So I didn't believe it, first of all, because she was an actor, and I was like, oh great, an actor's going to save my life. But I took it to my parents and I said, this is what I've heard. And my parents said, this sounds crazy, but you are worse off now than you were before you started. Let's maybe go see an addiction specialist and run it by him or her and see what they say. And after a little bit of shopping, I found an addiction specialist here in Los Angeles who was a proponent of TSM. And he sat down with me and he asked me what my history was with alcohol, what my family's history was with alcohol, because it is a family disorder. He said to me, he goes, I actually think this could work for you. I think, this could be something that could help you. And I thought about it. And after a month of serious soul searching, I said to my parents, with their support, I said, this is something I want to try. I'm really scared. I don't know what's going to happen. But I really want to fill this prescription and give it a shot. So I filled the prescription, and I waited about 3 weeks to actually take the plunge. And, I took the pill, I waited an hour, and I relapsed. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done. I have never done anything as scary as doing that.
How long especially had you been sober at that point?
2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And, here I was engaging in something that could potentially kill me. I thought, if this doesn't work, one, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop drinking. And two, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to, everybody that I was in program with, that this is what I had done. And, I took the pill, I waited an hour, and I had that first sensation that everyone feels when they take naltrexone and they wait, is that I'm like, well, this isn't very interesting. This is like, the way I describe it to people, it's like riding a bike up the hill, but without air in the tires.
Ooh.
Like, you can still get there. It just sucks, it doesn't feel as good as you thought it would. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess that happened and I'm okay. I'll try it again. And then after 3 sessions, I actually got drunk and I got wasted. And then I got really scared because I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I detonated a bomb. So I can hear a cat. Is that your cat?
That is my cat, and
Oh,
I am muting my
no,
microphone
no, no, no,
while you
no,
talk now.
not at all.
He's
I
not
just
in
didn't
the
know what that
room,
was.
and I think he's a little upset about it right now.
Okay, got it. We'll let him in. So I got really scared, and I thought, oh, what have I done? I'm going to completely ruin my life. And so I called up my specialist and I said, this happened. And he said, well, how long have you been working this method? And I said, this is only my 3rd session. And he said, okay, well, I think before we, get all doom and gloom, I think you should give it some time. And, I was really nervous because I thought, what if I can't stop drinking? But the more that I drank on the Sinclair Method, and the less I started to get out of it, and the repetition of the process of taking the pill, waiting an hour and having a drink and not getting what I used to get out of it, something phenomenal happened that never happened in abstinence. My craving for alcohol went away. And that is the reason why I was miserable in my traditional program, because here I was doing the right thing. Here I was doing everything that was asked of me. And the longer I was abstaining from alcohol, the more my cravings seemed to increase. I don't know how you were, Seth, in your recovery, if you stopped thinking about alcohol. But for me, I'm the kind of person, and I've always been this way, when you tell me you cannot do this ever again, I just want to do it more and more and more. I think it's both habit and it's also my sort of fickle nature. But for me, abstinence from something was doing exactly the opposite of what I ultimately wanted to achieve, which is I just didn't want to think about alcohol anymore. And the other issue for me, and then, I'll ask Seth about his experience with cravings, but I'm the type of person that if I have a problem, I want a solution and I want to move on with my life. And I found myself in recovery in an abstinence program talking about drinking, talking about not drinking more than I ever was drinking. And it was a 1 day at a time program, but it was like every day of my life. This was something that I had to check in with. And I think in 2020, with all the advances in medicine, why is this the one thing that has this like spiritual component that is part of the cure? Why is this the one thing that we can't treat with medication, but all the other diseases that we have cures for doesn't contain a spiritual component? And I'm not trying to knock religion. I'm a person that belongs to a synagogue, and I talked to my rabbi, and I've had a bar mitzvah, and I'm proudly Jewish, but I don't understand how that component and my relationship to alcohol, my physical craving to alcohol, why those two things had to be mutually exclusive. So the Sinclair Method separated those two elements. I was able to compartmentalize this religious thing that's important to me, but I was also able to have a total responsible relationship with something that was causing harm to me.
And Seth, you okay, I think I'm live again. You actually a little over a year ago, wrote an amazing piece that you shared on Facebook about the difference between sobriety in AA and sobriety with the Sinclair Method. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I find myself getting these streams of consciousness, and I just start writing. And what I found is I everything I needed to know about alcohol use disorder, I learned in the 6 months that I took this Sinclair method. I almost learned nothing about alcohol use disorder in AA. And I don't even know if I remember what I wrote, but I can say what I remember how I felt. And that is that even I didn't understand what a craving was until I started doing the Sinclair method. But I had cravings all the time when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had a sponsor that was pretty brilliant. He said that he believed that AA was a program of distraction. And it really is just that. I think that's the only tool that AA has, is to get people distracted, because distracted from the cravings, because it's like 90 meetings in 90 days, work with a sponsor, read the literature, get into service, all these things. And they're really all distractions. But then here comes naltrexone and the Sinclair method, and it's really hard to describe, but
Well, the piece that I'm recalling, you talked about the difference in the thinking about, always thinking about not drinking, as opposed to just simply not drinking.
Right. It's like okay, I'll identify with something that I have a problem with now, and that's food. Having alcohol use disorder to me is like being hungry all the time or being thirsty all the time. And what the Sinclair method does is it slowly turns that valve so that it's like I'm no longer hungry or thirsty for alcohol anymore. So it's not even a thought. So when I see a light beer commercial in
Yeah.
for the commercials here today, it just doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't trigger anything. I live right across the street from a liquor store. I look out the back, and I see the sign. Nothing. So it's like this weight has been lifted off of me. It's like I don't have to be on guard anymore for worrying about if I'm going to get struck drunk one of these days.
And I imagine that the removal of that fear has got to be both liberating but also empowering. Would you two agree?
Yes.
Absolutely. Just building on what Seth was talking about with the light beer commercial, I think Claudia talks about that epiphany that she had when she was driving down Melrose and she saw the ad for the liquor commercial, whereas before it was this reminder of something that she still craved and couldn't do. But after some time on the Sinclair Method, it was just a billboard.
Right.
And, you know, I had that same moment too, where every time I, you know, saw a commercial for wine, or there was an event that was posted on Facebook or anywhere that advertised, and I definitely believe that I think we sort of glorify alcohol consumption way too much in our society. I mean, I think that's something that definitely needs to be shifted. But I think, you know, there was such a sense of sadness and loss for me um, when I would see this thing that, you know, I could no longer have in my life, that it would just send me into such a sad spiral that the turnaround time for that was just extraordinary. But once I had that sort of deadening experience with drinking alcohol, and it no longer gave me the pleasure that it used to give me, slowly over time, my because my brain chemistry was slowly changing, my desire for it had naturally changed, not because of, like Seth was talking about, not because of the distractions of not drinking and all the work that goes into that. It was just this like physiological shift in my brain where I just no longer wanted something anymore. I mean, like if you have an addictive personality like I do, it will move. Like I like Seth, I'm like, oh, food, what's this? You know, and like I had to sort of tackle that, you know, next. And, you know, if not food, then there's the next thing. Which, you know, if I can kind of just switch gears for a moment, because it's so important for me to just put this out there. I made a lot of mistakes when I started TSM, you know, and I think one of the mistakes that I made was that once I knew that it worked, I was like, great, I'm done. I'm moving on. This is over, and I'm going back to my life, and I'm going back to my friends, and you know, I'm gonna. It was like so naive of me to think that like once I took away, or once I fixed the physical craving of alcohol, then everything else was just gonna sort of fall into place. And that's where habit came in for me, where my go-to with alcohol has always been about stress management and relief from social anxiety. So when I was drinking again, which was my tool, and I hadn't done any of the work as to why I used alcohol so alcoholically, I just gave myself complete permission to go back to drinking like I used to drink. And the mind is a tricky thing. And yes, naltrexone works, and I believe it does work. But I also know that I am stronger than my mind. And if I want to drink, or if I want to get drunk, with pill or no pill, I am going to get drunk. So until I was able to actually get into the why I drink and start doing the therapy and really breaking down what my relationship was to alcohol, stuff, by the way, that you do in AA, which I think is fantastic, which I was able to go back to without this sort of stress of knowing that, you know, I can never drink again and we want you to do all this work. I was able to actually sort of calmly go into the actual reasoning behind why we drink and why we use alcohol to sort of support us in so many areas in our life. I was able to sort of unlearn a lot of those bad habits. And that was something that I wish I had done in the immediate, because I do think it's a twofold therapy, which is take the pill, know it works, and get into therapy. And you know, I think when Katie and Shane were talking about with respect to mindfulness, and I thought their chat was so brilliant, because mindfulness is like is the hardest thing for me to do. I mean, you know, meditating and breathing or being quiet with thoughts, I mean, the scariest thing there is. But honestly, if you do the work and you give yourself permission to really learn that skill set, I mean, you never master it, but just learn it, you will find that your anxiety and your need for the reach for the bottle will diminish completely. So, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of the therapy component, and I've been working with this great recovery program called Lion Rock, which is an online recovery program that I work with an addiction specialist who has 9 years of sobriety, who works with me like online once a week. And then I also have a group session with Michelle, who was in the first forum. And I work with other like-minded individuals, which is really helpful, because the third part that was missing for me that I got from TSM was self-esteem, that this could work, because when you only know one way of treating something and you only know that this is the only way to do something, you will find thousands of people who are doing it that way. But if you try something else where there's nobody, you feel like a lunatic. And I would say for the first year, I felt like for the first time in my life, I feel like a crazy person. I would tell my friends, hey guys, guess what I'm doing? I'm taking a pill, I'm waiting an hour, and I'm having a drink. And the look on their face, their eyes would glaze over. They would look at me like, you're insane. And then I would feel insane. So I fell once again down into a complete spiral. And I went back to my addiction specialist, and he said, I think what's missing here, the only piece that's missing, is the fact that you don't feel confident that this is actually recovery. You feel like you're doing something that is foolish and you're going against the grain and you are just engaging in reckless behavior. And I always knew in my heart of hearts, if I knew nothing else, that I wasn't doing TSM and I wasn't like leaving AA because I wanted to destroy my life. I was leaving AA because I wanted to make my life better, and I wanted to like live healthier, and I wanted to live more confidently. And that was the only thing that carried me through to reach out and say, look, this is working, but I still don't feel confident that this is the right path for me. I need some help. And so that's where I was able to get hooked up with Lion Rock, and I was able to get hooked up with a specialist who was able to support me and say, no, we're going to treat, this is your recovery and this is your program, and I'm going to support you on this journey. And she also, and she also happens to be 9 years sober. So that in itself is absolutely incredible, which is a testament to the idea that this is like something we can all be compassionate to each other about. It doesn't have to be this thing where if you're not doing it this way, then you're doing it wrong. Or if you're doing it here, then, we can't hang out, or we can't help each other or support each other. It is really a sort of a beautiful thing that I was able to find into this TSM journey.
So, Seth, what about you? Have you had any experiences with, like, how did people who knew you when you were in AA and sobriety through AA react when you came out as using the Sinclair Method?
Well, actually, what happened was I left AA in like 2009, and I stayed away, and I basically didn't talk to anybody. So I had like a good 6 year space where I went back to drinking. So
so how many years when you left AA, before you started drinking again?
probably a couple months.
Oh, really?
It was
okay.
because I had heard of something else about that kind of refuted AA's knowledge. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try some controlled drinking. And it took 6 years to get really bad again. But I learned that it's very tricky. Alcohol is very tricky, and it's that endorphin release that really puts you on the ropes. I mean, so as far as who knows that I did the Sinclair Method, my father, some very close friends, but I really didn't talk to anybody in AA about it. I have this fantasy about one day being strong enough to go back to meetings and just sit there and see who the newcomers are that are struggling, and maybe taking them aside afterwards and saying, "Hey, I got something for you."
Just like hang out in the parking lot.
Well, over the years, we have heard from people who have found somewhat supportive AA groups who, they do want people who are using medication therapy, whether it's TSM or another medication, and trying to cut down people whose ultimate goal is sobriety, but they're not there yet, who have found the benefit of the in-person camaraderie at an AA meeting, where it's been acceptable as long as they adhere to the rules of you don't go while you're drinking. Don't show up to the meeting drunk. Obviously, it's a respect type of thing. But that's not most people's experience. Some people have been lucky. Most are not. What advice would you give to people who are still at a place in their life where they want that face-to-face meeting ability? They want to be able to connect with their peers who are also ultimately not wanting to drink and to give up alcohol entirely while they're still on the Sinclair Method. What advice do you give to them about how to find a supportive group and how to make the two worlds meet, because they're not mutually exclusive, or they don't have to be anyway?
Well, first of all, here we are. I mean, we're all TSMers, so we found each other. There's a website. There's the Sinclair. There's the TSM Warriors, but comparatively, crumbs for now to what is available in the abstinence world. I've really wrestled with this, and this is my opinion, and this is just how I feel. But I can't go back to AA, because that is a place for abstinence and people who want to be sober. And I respect that. And that's the way they're doing it. And I don't want to march in there and change this institution that appears to be working for a large, when I go to the meetings, there's more people that it's working for than it isn't working for. So who am I to come in there and say, you guys have to do it my way too? No, it's I don't want to badger what this TSM experience into the AA world. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I completely understand the need for human contact and fellowship and camaraderie. That's the thing that I didn't think I was going to miss, that I really did miss when I left AA, is because I didn't have that space I could go to at the end of a really hard day and just say, this day sucks, and then have someone tell their shitty day, and then it just magically distracted you from your own thinking. Like Seth says, it's another distraction, but it does work. I didn't have any of that, and it was just completely ripped away. I had to go find it, and it's been hard. It's not easy, but through Lion Rock, through some of the people I've met in TSM, I'm having one-on-one calls with people again. I'm finding fellowship. I think us just being here and having this conversation, as hokey as this sounds, this is the beginning, I hope, for some kind of new experience for people out there. But I personally, I'm not going to try to fit myself back into AA, because I have too much respect for it. But I don't want to hear what Seth has to say, but I also want to just throw this out there. When I told my circle of AA people, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to try, in my head, I created a million scenarios where people were telling me all the things I thought they were going to tell me, but no one said any of that crap. Everyone was like, look, David, we support you 100%. I don't know if we believe it, but I want you healthy and I want you happy. And if this is the thing that's going to work for you, then that's what you need to do. And if it doesn't, I hope I'm the first person that you call if you need to try it this way again. And I was so grateful, and I am so lucky to have created that support network within that community. And to me, that's what recovery truly is. I mean, that is what I think when I think of what recovery is, just this endless amount of compassion.
Well, and that's wonderful that you had that experience, because that seems to be atypical to what a lot of people experience. I hear a lot of stories, and Seth, you probably do too, moderating and running one of the peer support groups on Facebook, actually multiple, that so many people, when they try to make that transition from anything that's sobriety based to TSM, the argument that, well, maybe you weren't a real alcoholic, which is something that blows my mind. That, and people talk about how it's just a horrible experience. And I've heard so many stories about people who have been absolutely berated over their decision to try a medication assisted harm reduction therapy in order to facilitate their recovery. And have you also seen a lot of that, Seth? I keep calling you Seth today. I'm just getting my S's mixed up. Are you our Seth?
I think I'm calling you Seth too. I'm so sorry.
No, it is Seth.
I am Seth.
It is Seth.
I am Seth.
Or Seth.
Oh,
okay.
You got me.
I was preconditioned to think
Shane?
I was calling you Shane.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I thought I was crazy.
No, it's me. It's been a long day.
Well, as far as other groups, I went to a few SMART meetings, and SMART seems to be very friendly to TSM. They would prefer you to be abstinent because that's kind of where they lean, but they're in favor of medication-assisted recovery. So if you still want that kind of camaraderie and the ability to vent with people and drink coffee with people, then a SMART meeting might be a way to go. What was the other question, Jenny?
Just when people leave AA, some of the some of the horrible things that they're told on their way out the door.
Well, see, I never told anybody I was leaving, so I
told
avoided
everybody.
that.
I think I even sent out save the date cards because I made it everyone's business. I was like, this is what's happening. This is the date. I'm doing this. And my friends were like, this is crazy. Usually people, when they relapse, they just relapse. You're actually like, you picked a date. I'm like, well, yes.
At the time when I left, I was opening a big book study group, which I had started. Well, I didn't really start it. I changed it to a different format. It was a big book study group before, but so the group got large enough to where I was like, okay, well, look, I got other things to do. Here's the keys. I'm out of here. You guys run this thing. I know you got it. And then I just kind of disappeared. And so that's kind of how deep I got into it. I was actually running a big book study group for a while. But there is definitely something that I've realized with doing the Sinclair Method is that, and it happened to me a lesser extent when I originally left AA in 2009, but there's this identity crisis. Like, who am I now? I used to be the drunk guy. I used to be the AA guy. Who am I now? Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to, it took me a good solid 2 years to to finally feel okay with where I'm at now. Because, after decades of drinking, then 8 years of AA, then 6 years of drinking again, this was like totally new territory for me. And I had to learn a whole new way to be. So,
well, you got to finally figure out who you are.
right.
Well, gentlemen, we are almost out of time. We've got about 2 minutes left to go. And
Jenny, can I ask Seth one question
absolutely.
real quick? Okay. So Seth, you had a tremendous amount of time in abstinence. Then you had a period of time in this controlled drinking space. And then now you have this other experience in TSM. My question is now that you've had all three experiences, do you think people who have alcohol use disorder can do this or should do this without the assistance of medication therapy?
To do this without naltrexone?
Yes, or one of the other recommended medications. Because you've had an experience with all three ways of your drinking habit.
Abstinence was the hardest thing I've ever done. Drinking was the hardest thing I've ever done. TSM with naltrexone, easy compared to all that. I wouldn't recommend. And you see, somebody could do SMART, and SMART works for people, but what SMART does is that or moderation management, I should say. Moderation management tries to get people to taper off.
Oh, it seems like such work.
It is work.
There's just so it seems exhausting.
I'll take a pill.
Very punishing.
I'll take a pill and drink any day.
Yeah. People always ask me, what about what if you forget to take your pill, or why maybe you'll reach a point where you're like, I don't need my pill anymore, and I'm just like, my alternative is to sit in a church basement and drink coffee and listen to stories and go through that whole thing again. I'll take a pill, and the way that I rationalize it for me is, if you were given a diagnosis of diabetes and your doctor said to you, you have to take insulin for the rest of your life. If you don't take your insulin, you are going to die.
Yeah.
That's how I rationalize it. And I think to not rationalize it that way, to be given this gift that we've been given, and excuse my French, to fuck around with something like that by not taking it. And I just think you definitely, if that's the case, you definitely should not be drinking at all, period. And you need to figure out a way to make abstinence work. But this has been a total gift for me. And, the reason why I'm on here is because, I just want anybody out there who is floundering in something that isn't working for them to know that, first of all, you're not crazy. And two, if you look hard enough, you will find the support you need. And three, there is another way. So, I mean, if I can just sort of throw that out there.
Well, as far as not taking the pill.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, and then we got to wrap up.
Well, as far as not taking the pill, I look at alcohol as a flammable substance, which it is. So I don't want to run around with, potentially bursting into flames. So that's my reason for taking naltrexone.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I am so glad that you took some time out of your day to be on our panel. Thank you for everyone who is watching. I want to give one last shout out to our panel sponsor, Deer Haven Gardens, and our co-presenting sponsor, Rhea Health. And again, our sponsors have allowed us to make all of this content available all day long for free. So if you enjoy the content that you're seeing, if you want to see us able to do more, please, even if it's not today, if you have the opportunity in the future to donate, we would greatly appreciate that. And
Donate 2 cocktails. That's what I say. 2 drinks, $30 at a really hip bar. 2 drinks, 30. That's
sounds good. Yeah, donate those 2
just
drinks.
do it.
And we have one more panel coming up in about 12 more minutes. So we are going to take a short break. And Seth, I will see you on the other call in a few minutes for the peer support. Thank you, David. And I'm going to go ahead and sign us off now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.